Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to our second stream. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to our second stream. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to our second afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to our second afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to our second afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to. Wow. Who knew that could happen? That was different. All right. This whole thing is a complete learning curve. So, welcome again to what is not me in stereo. So, I am your host, Aileen Day, and today we are going to be joined by some new guests. On Tuesday, we had Amy Hare and James Line, and today we are going to be joined by Yvette Tarrant, who is the grief support coach, and another wonderful guest of ours is going to be Tim Beale, who is the owner of the Anglo Motorsport. Anglo Motorsport. He is going to tell you all about how he got into racing, and we're going to chat to Yvette about everything when it comes to managing grief. And you know, in the times like this, there's probably no better time. I'm sure at the moment everybody has had some waves of emotions, and you don't have to go through it alone. And so Yvette's going to help us with a few tips on how to make sure that we get through all of this and come out the other end with a healthy mind. So, without further ado, I am going to try and not fuck this part up, and I'm going to bring them online. So, bear with me 1 second. Isn't this so much fun? Technology at its finest. And I've learnt so many new lessons since starting streaming in the short week that it's been so far. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who has joined in and supported us to date. And it's been fantastic to see that we've got a few new followers. So shout out to you guys, to Beck Bishop, to It's a Mega Thing. Thank you very much for following us. Nails Van Deagle, thank you. And Dom and Megan, thank you very much for following, and we're really looking forward to doing it all again this afternoon. So sit back, get ready, and here's hoping we have this lit. Are they there? Are they there? 1, 2, 3. Oh, yay! We have one. We have two. Fantastic. Hello. How are you? Hello, Tim.
Hey, how you going?
Very good, and you, Yvette? How are we?
Awesome. How you doing, Aileen?
Very good. Now, do we have anyone in the chat who can let us know what the sound quality looks like? We did a test earlier this afternoon, and it wasn't ideal. But in saying that, I must say, guys, it actually sounds much better at the moment.
Right.
Yes.
But we can't see you, but we can hear you.
Right. Isn't that weird? Must be because we could see each other before, but now that we've gone live, I think we've lost each other's. Well, I can see you guys, but you can't see me. So here's hoping that doesn't detract from anything, but I can hear you beautifully, so that is a great start. And I just want to thank you guys for joining me this afternoon. And hopefully we'll have a really good chat, and we'll get the chat box going, and have some really cool questions coming through for each of you. Sound good?
Yep, sounds good.
Cool. All right. Well, I was wondering if we might be able to start with you, Tim. So, give us a little bit of an introduction as to who you are, what you do, and I've got some questions for you after that.
Okay, so I run a Formula Ford race team. So basically, Formula Ford is a feeder category to a lot of high-level categories in Australia, ultimately sort of V8 supercars. Worldwide, sort of Formula One. So basically, the majority of V8 supercar drivers have done this category along as part of their learning curve, and a lot of F1 drivers as well have been a part of this category. Teaches the kids how to drive a car with a gearbox and on a larger racetrack. They generally come from go-karts into Formula Ford. And we run that basically mainly in New South Wales. We also do experience days, so where we actually teach the general public how to drive the Formula Ford race cars as well.
Oh, fantastic.
Just started implementing over the last 5 years.
Okay. So, what is it that got you into the world of racing?
Just through the probably the love of sort of cars and just really attention to detail on doing a proper job, not doing a sort of a half-assed job, as as you may say. Just the attention to detail, the competitiveness within the racing side of things. The fact that you're working or trying to beat a group of other people doing exactly the same thing. You're always tested every time you go out and do a test day or a race meeting. By the end of it, you're graded basically by a timesheet. So however well you do on that day is sort of documented, and the guys that do the best job on that day, the ones that sort of come out at the top. So it's challenging in a lot of ways, but they're the things that I sort of like about it. How I got into it, just through just my sort of passion for the mechanical side of things in cars. A friend of mine at school, his father had one of these cars when we were growing up, and he used to race it, and that's sort of how I got into the racing side of things. None of my family was involved in motorsport, so it was something that I generally sort of followed, for a few years to get some sort of knowledge of what's involved in that industry.
As someone that failed their driving lesson or driving test twice, I am enjoying it, because the gentleman who taught me how to drive at the point where I did pass was actually a racing car driver as well. So that probably explains some of my driving prowess. When people tell me to slow down, I'm not on a racetrack. But I think one of the things that I learned while I was being taught by him was actually it's not all about going fast. There's a lot of technical skill that comes into motorsport that people don't probably understand or have an appreciation for. Of all the technical skills, what's probably been one of the biggest skills that you've really had to apply yourself to figuring out and mastering?
For myself, probably just piecing everything together. There's just a lot of information that's coming at you in a very short space of time.
Yeah.
Being able to, I suppose, process that and get rid of the stuff that you don't need to know, and just picking out the good bits of it, and being able to come up with something in a fairly short period of time to improve it for the next time that you go out.
Yeah.
So basically, we have the data that comes back from the cars, which shows us exactly how, shows you the lap time of the cars, the corner speeds, or the speed around the whole of the track,
Yeah.
RPMs, brake pressure sensors, steering angle, and throttle position. So you've got a lot of electronic information that are coming back, and also you've got the driver's feedback as well of how they went, how good a job they did themselves driving wise.
Right.
So how the car felt within that session, track conditions based on the the temperature of the day, whether it's a windy day, whether it's a hot day, cold day, damp, raining, lots of different elements there. But also just sort of watching the car out on the track as well, from a passenger, not from a passenger side of things, but from a third party side of things.
Yeah.
Just watching and hearing, what's going on there. And then probably just sort of knowledge of knowing what the cars can do and what they've done sort of previously wise. So just sort of putting all that information together, knowing which area to sort of concentrate on. Some areas you work more on the data side of things. Sometimes you work more on the driver. Or if it's say going from a wet to a dry session or a dry to a wet session, then the majority of the work there is sort of done on the car and changing that over to those different settings, because obviously the speeds are a lot different. The way that the car handles is a lot different in the wet compared to the dry as well. So the biggest thing there is changing the settings of the car. So yeah, just sort of probably piecing all those things together, and there's no one set formula that works each time. It depends on what driver you've got, the experience that they've got, the conditions, and and where they're at. Sometimes they're doing a better job than other days. We're all sort of humans, so we have sort of good and bad days, and just sort of trying to find where the biggest gain is that you're going to get out of the situation, really.
Yeah.
So, that's probably one of the biggest challenges that just from running a team side of things.
It sounds remarkably like leading a business, to be honest.
Yeah, it does. There's a lot of obviously within running the team, there is running a business, which is what it is as well.
Yeah.
Within our category, we don't have many sponsors involved. So basically,
Really?
our customers are paying for our services.
Okay.
So we don't employ drivers at this level. They're all trying to make a name for themselves. So it generally comes down to them finding the sponsors or the family business to sort of support the hobby or the career path at that particular point. So basically, our drivers are our customers as well.
Okay.
Doing the right thing by the customer, and not only by the customer, but also get the results as well for the driver.
So your level of motorsport, I think you mentioned before, is the pathway to where they would become professional F1 drivers. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. I mean, on the Formula One side of things, it's probably 3 or 4 categories after our category that they'll generally do.
Right.
Just like stepping up on the rungs of the ladder. But generally, Formula Ford, you start off in go-karts when a lot of kids start off at 6, 7 years old, racing go-karts or early teens, and then when they get to sort of 14, 15, now you're allowed to go circuit racing. So that's generally when they start stepping up into as in like proper cars as such, which bigger cars, proper tracks. They're not go-karts anymore, and that's generally Formula Ford is the next sort of rung on the ladder to learn the bigger tracks, learn how a car works, how to get the most out of a set of tyres, out of an engine, mechanical grip in the cars. And then in Australia, majority of the guys that win the Formula Ford side of things on the national series, they generally go on to the V8 supercar.
Oh, okay. So that's the link.
The Jamie Wincops, the Kelly brothers, all those guys, even some of the older guys, Russell Ingall, Marcus Ambrose, they're all ex-Formula Ford guys that did Formula Ford before they stepped up into the V8
So is it a case of, students would come to you to learn to crawl before they walk, therefore run type scenario?
Yeah, I mean, generally most people have got racing experience before they come to us.
Right.
On the race team side of things, so they've probably raced go karts and may have raced other categories, but generally sort of go karts, and then they step up into Formula Ford. And yeah, that can be anything from sort of 14 to sort of 18 sort of years old. We do have sort of older guys as well that run in the team. They're probably not necessarily doing it as a career; it's more just from a hobby side of things. So we normally have sort of 4 or 5 guys that race with us every season.
Yeah. I have to ask the burning question: why Ford?
It's a category that started off in England about 50 odd years ago, and basically it was a Ford engine that was used. It was a very popular engine back then. It still is fairly common now. We still use the same engine, even though it's 50 years old.
Right.
We do have a newer engine. It's a newer Ford engine. Basically, back then, Ford did sponsor the category. So basically, it's a Ford engine, so everybody uses the same standard engine.
Yeah.
The difference in the chassis side of things. So it's like having a Ford, so like your road car, which is a Ford. It could be a Ford engine in a Holden chassis, or it could be in a Nissan sort of chassis. So basically, there's a handful of different chassis manufacturers out there that manufacture the chassis that use the same engine. And the principles, we're just trying to have a cost-effective open wheel racing category. Once you keep a reasonable control on what people can do, it just makes just brings the cost down on the category, so it makes it more affordable for more people.
Right. I did not know that. There you go. I've learnt something new already. That's fantastic. Here I am thinking it was a Ford versus Holden scenario, and there's actually a whole reason behind it.
Yeah. No, it's just as I said, it's one engine that everybody uses, and it's exactly the same specifications. There is different engine builders that can build the engines.
Yeah.
But they all are everything is out of a general road car, which was like one to Escorts and Cortinas back in the early 70s.
Good old Cortina. My first car was an Escort. A poo brown Escort.
Yeah, that's pretty original stuff.
It was disgusting. I do not know what came over me when I let my dad convince me to buy it. I think it had some pretty intense tires on it that were for racing or dragging or something, and I think I got won over by something as simple as that. But the joke was on me because I never actually ended up driving it, and unfortunately my dad had a car accident and he got written off. So yeah, that was fun. But yeah, good old. My first car was a racing car and I never got to touch it. So, but so I find it really interesting. So where I live in Victoria, I'm not sure if you're familiar with a place called Calder Racetrack.
Yes.
Yeah. So Calder Racetrack is, from my understanding, is going to be closing down soon or has closed down.
Yeah, I don't think it's really. It's not had any race meetings there for probably 10 or 15 years, I think. It was. I think we first raced there in 95, 96 when I first came over to Australia.
Yeah.
And then I think there's probably 5 or 6 years after that, and then it's sort of started to fall apart a little bit. Obviously Bob Jay's sort of behind that. I'm not sure what the ins and outs were, behind the scenes. But yeah, there's more racetracks being sort of closed down than what there are being built at the moment. So it's even though the industry is growing and a lot more people are getting involved in it, it's one of those industries that is or the option or the places where you can go are getting smaller, but even though there's more people getting involved in it. So
Well, and it's funny you mention that, because even though Calder is closing down, whether it's probably too far gone to renew it or refresh it, there's actually works being done not 2 kilometres away from where I live in the southeast suburbs of Victoria in Melbourne, and they're building a new Calder. So yeah, so in a suburb called Pakenham, and it's touted to be bigger and better than Calder Raceway, and it's interesting because there's been a very split view on its benefits to the local town. And where I live in the southeast suburbs, there is still considerable open space available, and you know, reasonably easy to build on as well. So yeah, we're getting our own racetrack, and I, for one, am actually quite excited. As far as I'm concerned, when it comes to race meets, I'm just going to rent my house out and earn a bucket. So
a lot of people don't realise how much benefits a racetrack does bring to the community.
yeah,
It's not just the people going there with the cars; it's the they have lunch there. It creates jobs in the local the local towns around there, accommodation wise, when people stay for the weekend.
yes,
And it just brings a lot of sort of passing people through. I mean, a big one up here, which has probably been going for about 20-25 years, is Wakefield Walsh down near Goulburn.
okay,
It brings a huge amount of money to to a country town which didn't really have much there. It's got the police academy there, but it does bring a lot a lot to the community.
I don't know that the police academy is really bringing in the people. Yeah, I think
there needs to be more being built. It is always I suppose the big argument from the green side of things, the pollution side, but it is it's a thing that not everybody, a lot of people do enjoy cars and driving, and getting the speed off the streets as well.
absolutely.
This is a relatively safe environment to drive as quick as what they want, and it's better off doing it in a controlled environment than people doing it out on the streets where other people are about, and you never know what's around the corner or on a racetrack. Not so that you know what's around the corner, but you know that there's not going to be a car coming the other way. They're all going in one direction, but everyone takes that as a risk when they go on the track. Just keeps you off the streets, which is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk to me about your driving experience. So you actually have the public come in and partake in driving around a racetrack without any kind of prior qualifications? Is that how it works?
Yeah. Yes. So basically, what we've done, we've just sort of utilised all the equipment, facilities that we've got that we use for the race team. And we also use some of our cars that we do races well on these experience days. So basically, we within like a 2 to 3 hour period, we can take somebody from off the street who's had no formal driving experience or racing, sort of racing knowledge, teach them how to drive an open wheel race car, and they can do anything between sort of 5, 10 or 20 laps around Sydney Motorsport Park, which is up in New South Wales.
Wow.
Also down in Victoria as well, at the TAFE facility at Wodonga.
Oh, Wodonga.
So yeah, it just gives the average
person.
That's a drive.
Wodonga, that is about a good 4-hour drive away from me. So I'm going to say if you're in the CBD, it's close to 5 hours.
Yeah, it's probably, I think it's about 3.5, 4 hours from Melbourne.
Yeah.
So yes, it's fairly safe circuit. I mean, we did look at trying to do something in Melbourne, but there's no tracks there that actually allow us to do what we need to do in a relatively safe environment.
Right.
So there's other tracks, Sandown and Phillip Island, but they are on tracks and fairly difficult to get onto, and fairly expensive to hire for the day as well. So
yeah, I imagine.
that's why we've used the facility at Wodonga.
Yeah. I mean, if nothing else, it's a beautiful town, bringing people into it. You know, I think as an advocate, an advocate of people shopping locally and bringing in and strengthening that local economy. I think if you can bring events like that to small towns, then it's an absolute bonus. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a motorsport TAFE actually at Wodonga, which is sort of right next to the track. And what we do, the students instead of doing their
that's
after
awesome.
they've done the HSC, or if they do leave school a little bit earlier, they can do a 1 or a 2 year TAFE course there, and they actually based on motorsport, and we do actually use their facilities, but also it gives some of the students there an opportunity to work with us on the experience days to learn what happens in a fast-paced environment. Okay, we're not actually racing at that point, but it just gives them practical experience of watching what they're doing, being consistent in what they're doing, and having their eyes open, and just fast-paced environment where where you need to be on your game, which is not generally doesn't happen in a normal normal working day.
Yeah.
Yes, it's great for those guys to be a part of that as well.
And what the set of skills that you could apply that learning to just in life, let alone on the track, like you said before, it just is essential adulting, really. That what a great opportunity to learn how to be resilient, how to think on your feet, how to be aware of everything that's going on around you. Those are some skills that if only everyone else got to learn as well.
Yeah, I mean that's I've been pretty blessed that I've been able to do sort of follow my passion for the majority of my life, and do something that I love to do, and being able to tick a lot of boxes for me, sort of personally wise as well as sort of business wise as well.
Yeah.
It is there's so many lessons that you get out of it, or the more you look into it, the more you realise that what the lessons are, and you can bring it back into your personal life, your family life, your business life. So it is a great a great industry to be involved in. It is tough at times within what we do. You have got to be very dedicated to wanting to be involved in this industry, but if that does tick the boxes, then the rewards far outweigh the other side of things. So it's been a good 20 odd years.
And as far as everything that has been going on in the last few months, even as far back as with the New South Wales bushfires, and now all the life as we now know it, how has that affected you and the business at the moment? And if it's affected you, what are you doing around just doing business differently? How are you getting through it?
Yeah, so basically, we are very event orientated. Probably 80% of what we do is events. Whether it's race meetings, we do come down to Victoria and compete down in Victoria as well. So basically, all these events, we normally have probably 15 or 20 events or race meetings that we participate at within a year. They've been wiped off the calendar as of 2 or 3 weeks ago. The experience days that we do as well. We have sort of 60, 70 people on those days throughout the day. So again, they've all been sort of wiped off the calendar at the moment. We don't really know when that is going to change, like anyone else. So that's been pretty tough. We've had to do a lot of sort of rescheduling. With the people that we've got sort of booked in. But probably what we've within the business model that we've got, we don't necessarily rely solely on on those events. We do have a lot of work in the workshop that we do. We don't get a huge amount of time to get onto those jobs, but we do restoration work on race cars. So basically, we pull everything apart on the car and bring them back to the original sort of condition.
Wow.
And
what a side hustle.
Sorry?
What a side hustle.
Yeah, I mean, we've got sort of a couple of projects that have been in the workshop for probably a year, 18 months that we haven't been able to get to because the other events just, we've either grown the event side of things and just sort of not had time to get onto those jobs. So like now it's a matter of sort of pulling those, the everyday stuff has gone to like the back of the workshop, and the stuff that was at the back sort of come to the front. So that's been really good. But also just within the racing side of things, you're always trying to improve on things. You're always trying to do a better job of what you did last time.
Yeah.
Even on the experience days, we're always looking at better ways to do what we've done, how can we be more efficient, and just building things around that, whether that's equipment in the workshop to make life easier. As we've grown, we've needed to build more of what we've already had as well. So it is good, there is a bit of a silver lining to the situation that it's given us an opportunity to not have anything on the go for the next maybe couple of months, but just to take a step back and regroup and just build on the foundations. So when things do come back, because they will, we're bigger and better than what we were, beforehand. We've got our stock on spares that's, we've been able to, to increase, and just the general equipment, tidy things up a little bit, just make things a little bit nicer, and just clear out some of the jobs that, we haven't had time to get to. So, from a work point of view, there's still plenty to do, and for the next couple of months. So it's been good, having that having that third element, and that's what I've sort of learned over the past 20 odd years. I started off just doing the racing side of things, but one of the issues with that is it is very up and down. So 1 year you can have 4 or 5 guys racing, the next thing you might only have 2. Irrespective of how well you do go or how passionate that you've gone as well, it's just the way that the way that the business is. So trying to get a consistent flow of work and business to keep the guys employed and to keep the the opportunity to keep you sort of paying the rent and paying all the bills that do keep coming in. That's when I've sort of deviated a little bit into the experience day. We used to do sort of corporate days, and we still do corporate days. That's started to sort of build up quite nicely over the last couple of years as well, and having the work in the workshop. So between the 3 areas, or 3 or 4 areas, when one area goes a little bit quiet, then another area we can fall back onto another one. So from a business side of things, it's the 3 or 4 different areas that we've got have been very beneficial.
As far as communicating the change of pace to the team and just showing that strength in leadership, how have you found it any different as far as mitigating people's concerns or stresses and keeping them on track? And I've had a lot of clients say to me they feel a bit lost, and this will be really great to chat to you about, Yvette. But how, from a leadership point of view, have you managed to kind of help everyone feel comfortable with what's going on at the moment?
Yeah, I think just just sticking with the facts and just not getting too carried away with sort of what's going on, and being in a probably just being in a position that I know it's nothing that we've done or one person sort of has done. Having the opportunity to be able to ride the downturn really as well, not having probably having your backside hanging out day after day, which it is quite easy to do in this industry, because you're always head down trying to improve the mechanical, the engineering side of things, and just losing focus of the the business side. But I think just being just sort of sticking to the facts and just being calm about what's going on, and sort of embracing it in a way and looking at the positives of what what this situation has brought. Yes, there's some areas that aren't that good, but there's probably twice as many areas that are a lot better. You just got to have your head up, looking for them, and just not get sort of pulled down with all the media hype, and just stick to your guns, and they will come out of it the other side. It's just the same with the racing side of things. You can be leading a race, and then something happens to the car, or the driver makes a mistake, and you go from leading a race to not even finishing. You have a DNF did not finish. Side of things, you can go from hero to zero very quickly, and not that I'm used to that, but I accept that, and it's a part and parcel of what we do. So in this situation as well, it's you can relate it so much back to the racing, and know that the week later you can come back and bounce back. You've got to be able to bounce back, from whatever punches that you've had, whether it's a small one, or whether it's having your having your ass kicked, you've had a real big beating. You can still come back and do what you did. You've got the opportunity to bounce back the week later. It's all down to your sort of mindset and how you approach it. Enables you to do that.
And I would envisage that nearly 90% of what you do in racing, especially while you're racing, is just mindset. Like, being strong in your belief systems, and comprehending that you can do what you need to do. Is that an accurate kind of concept?
I mean, it is. You just got to not so trust your instinct, but just make logical decisions. You've got to take emotion out of everything and just stick to the facts, because that's what's there. Whether it's all physics from a car's point of view, the facts of of where you finished, and the stats and stuff like that. Yeah, you can make things work to your favour if you want, but if you really delve into all the elements of what you've done, you can't hide from the truth. So you've just got to be looking for it, or have somebody that rationalizes a very emotional situation, to bringing it down to you may have won that race, but you only won it because 3 people had an accident that were in front of you, and they fell off as a result of your win. Okay, yes, a win is a win, and that's all part of the racing. But we still didn't quite have the pace of what those guys did, because we were in 3rd position. So
I think that's called doing a Stephen Bradbury.
You can still work on elements, even though you sort of have come out with the goods. But it's never a matter of sitting back and resting on your laurels. You've always got to be sort of looking for the next thing. And at the end of the season, we've been pretty fortunate. We've won the state championship up in New South Wales for the past 13 years, and with different drivers. And at the end of one year, okay, right, we've got to do it again next year. It's sort of we've got to find somebody else that can can do that job next year. So it's all a challenge, and every day is a challenge, and just do the best job we can.
It's how we rise up to it that matters, isn't it?
Exactly.
So we are going to take a break in a few minutes. Now, before we do, I was just wondering if you might be able to tell our viewers if they wanted to learn more about Anglo Australian Motorsport, what is the best way to learn more about you? Is it your website or Facebook, or how do we get in touch with Tim at Anglo?
Yeah, so you can either jump on the website if you're interested in one of the driving experiences that we offer, and that's www.driverformula4.com.au. Same thing again on Facebook, Instagram as well. Anglo Racing Academy is where you can find us there. We're doing a lot of behind the scenes at the moment on Facebook and Instagram, just while people are at home a lot, and we're doing weekly vlogs, so we just behind the scenes, and you know, 'cause a lot of people don't realise what does go on behind the scenes. I think the car goes away and then it just rolls back out again the next time, where they don't realise how much work goes into preparation and the maintenance of the cars to make sure that they can do the job that they're going to do the next time that they go out. A lot of people think it's just like a road car. Well, I get it serviced once a year, and it costs me a couple $100 to get it serviced. Whereas a race car, we spend many hours on them just to go and do a day's driving.
Yeah.
50 laps.
Yeah,
So,
that
yeah,
is
places.
that is certainly probably a common misconception or misperception of the actual effort that goes into the upkeep and the maintenance of, I guess, these experiences. So I've put your website into the chat box, so anyone that's watching this or anyone that views it afterwards, they are able to check it out, and we'll be able to hit you up over there. We are going to take a break, and we will be back at 4:20 to have a chat with Yvette Tarrant. Now, Yvette is the grief coach, and we are going to learn all about what that means. And I'm going to give you all 10 minutes, and I look forward to seeing you back here soon. Tim, thank you so much. Will you be able to join us on the way back?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks for the opportunity.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for stepping out of your comfort zone. I know it was a little bit scary when I said the word Twitch, but so far it's been amazing to have you, and I've really enjoyed learning more about motorsport. And I will give you all 10 minutes, and we'll be back very soon. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Right, we are back for round 2, and welcome to those watching live, and thanks for joining us. We've just heard from Tim Beale, the owner of Anglo Motorsport, and to be honest, it was fantastic. I've learned so many new things, so thanks, Tim. I appreciate that. And hopefully those of you listening or watching here now or later on will feel the same. And now we are going to talk to the effervescent Yvette Tarrant. Now, Yvette, you do something kind of different. I mean, not all of us go and manage motorsports either, so that's pretty different too. But
way different.
But completely different. And I really wanted to learn more about what it is that you do. And I think for those watching at home, and probably a lot of the people watching at home have landed at home and on Twitch or various platforms because they are either working from home or they're in a position where they've had to be made redundant or stood down. And a lot of what you do could really help. So I'm going to hand it over to you. I'd love for you to introduce yourself and tell us what is it that you do.
Thanks, Aileen. I'm a grief support coach, and my niche is widows. However, I do support anyone that's going through grief and supporting them through their grief journey, but also creating their vision of what their life looks like beyond, their grief as well. And I think you touched on something really important there, in that what we're going through now collectively on a global level, is absolutely grief. And I think what's also important is that people misunderstand what grief actually is. And grief is it's not about death, as in losing somebody that you love. It's the concept of death being the end of anything, any kind of loss or change that we have in our life. And we are going through that, as I said, collectively on a global scale right now, in terms of loss of our normalcy and loss of our life as we knew it. And moving forward, we don't know what that's going to look like, and there's no end point to it at this time as well. So there's a huge, and I think it's really important to name it and call it grief. There's a lot of talk about stress and anxiety right now, but it is absolutely grief as well. And I think it's really important to name it and call it that, so that will then allow us to give ourselves permission to feel it for what it is, which is what's really needed when it comes to grief as well.
Yeah. And so, how is it by chance that you got into this line of work? It's not often, you know, we hear about counselors and whatnot, but your specialty is exactly this. So talk to us about that process of finding this as your purpose.
Well, what's interesting is that never would I have envisioned my life being where it is now either, in terms of, you know, how I live, but also what I do for work in my coaching business as well.
Yeah.
And back in the end of October 2015, my husband was diagnosed with cancer, and we went through a 19-month journey of his treatment, and then he passed away at the end of May 2017. And you know, obviously our life was completely turned upside down, and I was already a coach at that point in time. I wasn't practicing, and at the time when my husband died, I wasn't working at all because I was taking care, you know, of him at home.
Right.
And so I sort of was at a point there where, you know, I knew I loved coaching, and I guess with what we had been through, I knew that whatever I was going to do for the rest of my life, given the lessons I had learned up until that point about how finite life was and how it can change in an instant, which when it was, I guess, going through that experience was, I guess, that was one of the biggest lessons that came out for me. Like, what I thought was certainty in my life was not at all. And so I knew that
Preach.
whatever I did moving forward was, it needs to be something that I love doing. And that was, again, the coaching space. So I jumped back into coaching, and I was asked a lot sort of in that time whether I would go into the grief coaching space. And I was like, no, like, I don't want to go into that space at all.
Yeah.
And I guess a few months ago, actually last year, I was asked that question again, and it was just like, you know, it just was a yes, you know, and I hadn't expected that. And so that's the sort of path I've navigated on. And what I found in my grief journey is that, you know, as a culture and as a society, you know, we do not do grief and death and loss and dying well at all.
No.
And as much as I coach, you know, it is a bigger picture than that. It's actually opening up conversation about those things. And there are so many myths and misconceptions around death and loss and grief that, you know, actually make it worse and make it harder and create more suffering for people. And so, you know, I guess I navigated all that journey on my own because what I saw just didn't connect with me. And I've found that sort of myself in supporting other people in that same thing. And I think there's a lot to be said for connecting and being able to communicate with somebody that has a level of appreciation and a level of understanding for what you have been through. Because when you're going through, you know, the depths of loss and grief, it can feel like an incredibly lonely and incredibly isolating space to be in. And so that now for me feels like the journey. It feels like I'm where I'm meant to be. And
yeah,
and
I love that saying. Yeah. So you mentioned that we don't deal with things like grief and loss and whatnot. What is it that could change that? Like, what are some of the things that turn that coping around?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things we do within our culture that does not help us, it does not serve us, is that we move away from pain rather than lean into it. You know, we tend to, you know, buffer and distract ourselves from pain and discomfort. We use food, sex, drugs, alcohol, Netflix, shopping, whatever that might be, and we tend to be in this space where if somebody is feeling not great, we want to always make them feel better without understanding, like, before we can feel better, the feeling has to come first. And it's the only way that we can actually move through that process and through that journey. So I think, you know, being able to acknowledge and being able to be open and honest about how we feel is hands down one of the things we need to change. And also, you know, leaning into it. And it can be hard, and it's messy, and it's ugly, and it's all of those things. And that was my journey as well. I mean, it was definitely messy at times, and that's okay. You know, giving ourselves permission to be in that space and whatever it looks like. And you know, in terms of we don't teach people how to experience grief, we also don't teach people how to support people going through grief. And,
that is very true.
Yeah, and so I think those of us that are experiencing grief, you know, we also have because I guess one of the biggest complaints I get from people is that, you know, people will say to me, you know, they say the most stupid things and it's not helpful, but people don't do that. But people that do that with the intention of being like that, people just don't know what else to do. They don't know what else to say. They think they're being helpful. And so I think it's a whole sort of, I guess, raft of things that we can do, but just opening the conversation and talking about it. Because even death, we don't talk about as a culture. And the only thing that's guaranteed when we're born is that we're going to die. We just don't know when. And we tend to measure life by years, but in that context, we take time for granted because we assume that we have tomorrow. Yeah. None of us are guaranteed tomorrow. So I think the conversation around death and loss itself is really important, because for too many of us, our first conversation around death is when someone actually dies. And we need to be having those conversations way before, you know, that actually happens.
And in saying that, how do we do that? You know, tactically, if we culturally aren't akin to communicating about death, how do we change that? What do we actually say to somebody? You know, do we wait until they're on their deathbed? Do we, you know, I remember some years ago, my mum sent my sisters and I a copy of her will, and I kind of am very like, oh yeah, like that's a thing you should have. But my sisters got quite emotional about it and upset at the concept of like, why are you doing this? Is he dying? Like, what's the need for all this? And you know, I find the difference, as you said, you know, the difference in reactions and emotions, and some people are happy to accept that that is part of the conversation that needs to happen, and some people just shut the fuck down, like they can't deal. So for those people, and I imagine you are probably coming up against a few of them at the moment who, as you said, grief can happen. You think reality is one thing, but you wake up the next day and it's completely goddamn different.
Yeah.
That
Absolutely.
is so many people's lives right now. So what do we tactically do to create that conversation? What's your advice around, you know, and I imagine also the platform that we're on a platform where a lot of people actually game. They choose to sit in a different reality as to the real reality. So how do we kind of face the truth? What do we do?
Look, the thing I would offer to you with that is just we change it by just one conversation at a time. You know, and that's open and honest conversation. And it's tough. People don't like it because it's hard and it's uncomfortable. And that's why, you know, again, one conversation at a time. And, you know, if we look at the concept of, okay, the idea of future pacing, you know, that something horrible is going to happen to, you know, your loved ones.
Right.
But let's look at it. What if something happened yesterday?
Yeah.
What if they died? Where would you be today?
Yeah.
What situation would you be in? And I'm so glad you wrote your mum's will, because insurances, like personal insurances, is something I'm incredibly passionate about, because there are too many people out there who don't have personal insurances because, again, they're hard conversations people don't want to have. But
what? And sorry, I'm just gonna. What do you mean by personal insurances?
Like life insurance, trauma insurance.
Right. Yes.
Those things where if for example your husband, wife, your husband, wife, if they died yesterday, where would you be today?
Yeah.
If you, look, I will use this as an example because it was my own. If you have a husband that is the main breadwinner in the family, and you don't have insurance for him personally, and he died yesterday, like, where is your wife? Where are your children? Where are they going to be today? Can they pay the bills? Can they keep a roof over their head? Do they have to move in with their own family? Like, it's those questions, and that's why we need to have the conversations. We need to make, it's actually like Tim said before, it's one of my favourite things to say to people is that, you know, we need to focus on the facts, because the facts are neutral. And we don't we need to remove our emotion out of it and just focus on the facts right now. Where are we at? Because even when we had our insurances set up, like I had to go back to our financial advisor and just ask, what the hell have we even got? So you don't set it up with the intention of having to use it, but you set it up just in case, because you just never know. And this comes back to this conversation about not taking time and not taking life for granted, because when we assume that we have tomorrow, we are complacent and we don't think about the what ifs. And, you know, normally I would say don't focus on the what ifs, but that's a situation where, you know, we do need to think worst case scenario. Same in business, same in anything. Worst case scenario, where will we be tomorrow if the worst? Where will we be today if the worst happened yesterday?
Right.
And
I love that. That's good.
Yeah, and are we prepared? Are we prepared for that?
Yeah.
And what will life look like, you know, moving forward if that does happen? So again, it's one conversation at a time, and it's the tough conversations to have. But I can tell you, it's a freaking much harder conversation if you haven't had it and something happens.
Yeah.
And that's when the shit really hits the fan. That's what I don't want to see people in that situation.
Yeah, I've commonly heard of situations where people are literally on their deathbed. You know, my uncle was one of them. He had very late set deep vein thrombosis, and it was caught, unfortunately, very, very late. And I believe he actually also had tumours. So, you know, he was like going out with a bang. But, you know, I remember my auntie saying to me, we were dealing with his finances and his wills and everything literally on his deathbed. And that's really not how I imagine is the optimal time to be managing those circumstances.
Absolutely. And here's the thing, like, as much as you may imagine what it's like to lose the people that are closest to you, like nothing can prepare you for the finality of death. Like nothing. Like even when you know it's coming, nothing can prepare you for what it's like when this actually happens. And so, you know, the level of grief and loss and change that you have in your life, particularly if you are also a parent and you're navigating your kids through that, that in itself is a game-changing, incredibly difficult time. To then add on top of that the fact that you cannot provide for yourself financially and you don't have a roof over your head. I mean, I know of so many situations where, you know, wives and mums have had to go straight back to work because they haven't been able to provide, that they don't have any money to be able to provide for their families. And so, you know, it comes back to, you know, that the reality of that and what that would really look like on the other side if you don't have those conversations now.
Yeah. And it's always interesting to me. I know human beings, that just the nature of them, they can be very, very good at deception and pretending things are okay, and really underneath, you know, that's probably a large reason why we have such an epidemic of male suicide, and you know, it horrifies me to think of how many male friends I have lost to suicide when outwardly they seem to be okay, but they really weren't. And they're really, you know, in essence, when you learn more about what was going on for them in life, they were grieving over something. And I'm curious to know from your experience, is there a way to tap into what is actually happening in the minds of some of our male friends? You know, it might be a little bit, what's the word, generic to say that women are maybe a bit easier to read, but that's probably not true either. I think women can also be master deceptors at pretending to be fine when they're not. But you know, when it comes to men specifically, that's kind of who we're talking about today. How do we make sure that they're really okay? Like if they are struggling with grief, like what do we look for?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up because unresolved grief has such a negative impact on people's lives. And again, it comes back to the concept of people not even understanding what grief is. And I think, as you said, with women, we do tend to communicate more than men do. But I think the other part of that culturally we teach men not to feel.
Yeah.
We teach men not to communicate how they're
Oh.
feeling, and that becomes kind of the programming, which again ties back into the grief as well, in that we're not open, honest about how we're feeling, and we don't
Yeah.
share what that is. And so, and obviously there's a lot of work that's being done on this, because the suicide rate amongst men and young men is horrendous, and
Fucking
clearly
terrible.
what we are doing, isn't working. And so again, it comes back to the simplicity. And this is the thing, like, these things aren't complicated. It is the simple things of just having a conversation and having open and honest conversations. And unresolved grief will show itself in behaviours. Like, often it'll show up in people's behaviours, their patterns of behaviour, anger, all of those kinds of things, where people are doing things that maybe not serving them in a positive way, if that makes sense. And so, it's again the conversations and being open enough, to call it. If you see something in somebody that you think doesn't look okay, is to call it, and to actually open it up. And I think, men together, like, having stronger men actually connect with, let's say stronger men, older men, whatever that looks like, but having that kind of mentorship happening as well, I think is really valuable when it comes to men, and just creating a space where they can go to, and they can be open and honest about what they're feeling and what they're going through. And, obviously when it comes to so many things and being open, vulnerability is a big word. So allowing a space where men can actually be open and honest and vulnerable about what's happening, because it's ludicrous, like, that they feel like they can't, because as a culture we have created that.
Yeah, that's actually really true, isn't it? And I have a 9-year-old son, and one of the things that I probably took on quite early was that if he wanted to cry, I let him. And some people would be like, oh, he's being a bit of a sook. And I'm like, well, he clearly has some emotions that he needs to let out. And as far as I'm concerned, I'd rather he let them out through tears than holding them and reserving them for something even worse later on.
And that's when we get the unresolved grief. And even at that age, we get layers of it start stacking on top of itself. And then they get to be teenagers and adult men who are carrying all of these layers of unresolved, unexpressed feelings. And that's when it shows itself in, I'll say ugly ways, but ways that aren't positive for themselves or the people that are around them.
Yeah. Tim, I'm curious, you work in a mostly, I imagine, male dominated arena industry. Do you see these behaviors kind of coming out to play when your drivers or your customers come in for a drive day? Do you see this pent up kind of energy that's probably not serving them the right way?
I mean, probably not. There's probably two elements to that question. On the experience days that we do, majority of the people that come out are males, but the thing on those days is, when they're out in the car, everything else doesn't matter. The whole world can fall apart, and for that 5, 10, 20, however many minutes it is, it's, if you're into the driving, you like driving quick, your focus is just on that next corner, because it's just you and a machine trying to drive as fast as whatever your capabilities are. So from that side of things, it is a very good escape. As I said, if anything else comes into your mind while you're out there, you need to come back in, because you're not focused on what you need to be doing. So it is a place, a very surreal sort of place that you can get away from everything. That's why a lot of people enjoy whatever happens at work, the family life, the personal life, that all is out of the window. But it's really good on that side of things. It's a way that people can express either their feelings or within a mechanical side of things as well, and getting the adrenaline and the buzz that you get out of driving a car on its limits. But also probably from a from a racer's point of view, when you do have young drivers that have probably all they've known from a very young age is they've raced every weekend or every other weekend. They've been at the racetrack with this go-karting, and they want to do this for a career, and they put all their effort into it. The families have put all their time and money into it, and not being able to achieve the goals, just like any sport really, whether it's golf, whether it's football, cricket, tennis, swimming. You put all this energy into one pursuit, and leave a lot of other elements of your childhood on hold, or to one side, because you're just so driven by wanting to achieve this goal. And there's a lot of drivers out there that have a lot more ability than some of the people that are racing at the top levels, but they don't have the finances behind them to be able to keep them at that level. So when they have to integrate themselves back into the real world as such, it can be very very sort of disheartening, and struggle to do a normal job and still try and get the same sort of buzz of what they got out of driving and racing in the normal way of life. And there is John Bale's one that has come out publicly wise, and probably the main one, I think 60 Minutes did a documentary on him as well, on his sort of depression from running at the top level of V8 supercars to not having any other career that he could sort of do except drive a car, and the challenges that he's had. So yes, we have probably seen both sides. One's more of a relief, the other is I think, like from any sports person and whatever level they've got to, whether it's an injury that's preventing you to carry on. But there's lots of elements that nobody looks at that side of things. It's out of sight, out of mind. They just sort of deal with it back in their own way, and obviously some people deal with it better than others. But there's not that I'm aware of, there's no real sort of courses or places to go that can reintegrate you back into sort of the normal way of life.
So they need a vet.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think, and I'll actually add to that as well, because I think there's I guess a couple of key elements that tie into all of that, and that is the first one is understanding that it's never the event or the circumstance or the situation that creates how we feel. Like, we create how we feel by how we perceive and how we choose to experience something. So even what we're going through now, even with the race car driving, it's not that we're not doing it anymore. It's not what's happening globally. It's how we choose to respond to it. And so having that awareness and personal responsibility to see that, okay, this is what's happening right now, but I get to choose how I respond to that in this moment. And the other thing is also one of my favourite words, and that is acceptance, and acceptance of what is. Because so often we create pain and I guess suffering for ourselves because we argue with the reality of what is. And arguing with reality means we will lose 100% of the time, because we cannot don't have any control over what's happened. We don't have any control over the future moving forward and what that looks like. And so, being able to have that level of acceptance of, what is, and we can't change that. So arguing with it and trying to demand that it be different than what it is will also create a greater level of pain for us. And so even just having understanding around that, a lot of people don't have that. And so again, it comes back to, it doesn't have to be complicated. It's just this simple understanding of how we think and how our brain works, and really seeing what we do have control over. And the only thing we have control over is ourselves, our thoughts, our feelings, our actions. Everything outside of us we do not control. And even with the coronavirus now and what's happening, I think for a lot of people, that's really may have been their first experience of truly understanding that we don't control what's going on outside of us. I think often we're under that we're under this illusion that we are in control, and we are controlling our lives, and we're dictating everything that goes on. And but the truth is, none of us have any idea what's going to happen tomorrow.
No.
None of us do, and none of us know if we're even going to be here tomorrow. And so just having an understanding of those things, it's incredibly empowering to be in that space and to know that, and to know that, you know what, I'm in control, so I get to choose.
Yeah. And I think you're exactly right. You know, I have been speaking to some people who were talking to their grandparents, for example, and their grandparents were saying, you know, I don't know what all the fuss was about. It's not like you have bombs falling on your heads, and you know, so their level of resilience is much stronger than the average adults, because the average adult really hasn't had to endure anything really. You know, we've probably had our you know, less than ideal moments in life, but we've never really had to endure something where there's a global call out to do better, and to really change the way we do life.
Yeah, and I think there's a big difference with that as well, in that, you know, when you go through your you know, something happens in your own life, it feels like you're going through it, and whatever that experience is. But right now, we're all going through it.
Yeah.
So the reason, even though we're isolated physically, we're not isolated in the experience itself, because globally we're all going through the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think what also, actually, I know what ties into that as well in terms of the grief is anticipatory grief, meaning that we are future paced with our thinking. Like we're grieving because we don't know what life's going to look like on the other side. We don't know where the end point is. And so we're worrying about and creating anxiety around what will be, you know, what is it going to look like? And what is my life going to look like? Am I going to have a job? You know, can I travel again? When can I connect with people? And so there's all of this grief and anxiety that we are creating because we're future pacing with our thinking as well. And I guess I would offer one of the greatest things that we can do in that is coming back to the present moment, always coming back as often as we can to connect with the right now, because stress and anxiety cannot exist in the present moment, because that, I guess the two words that create the greatest level of anxiety are what if. You know, what if this happens? What if that happens? It's all future paced. But when we come back to the present moment and you're in this moment right now, there is no anxiety in this moment. And so using things to ground yourself and like focusing on, okay, counting what are 5 things I see right now, what are 4 things I can touch, you know, focusing on your breathing and just coming back to the present moment. You take it, go away, and those some feelings aren't going to go, because they're a normal natural response of our brain, but just to try and lessen the impact a little bit, to bring ourselves back to that present moment.
So if anyone watching was to have a little bit of a reflection time and think, maybe I am one of those people who is a little bit stressed and a little bit upset about the what ifs in the future, and am coming to realize that you can't control everything, you know, what would be the top 3 things that you would say to them? So, you know, you're our coach. We've recognized that we might be a little bit not quite coping. What are 3 things that I can absolutely do today to change that and turn it around?
First of all, is take judgment off the table.
Judgment.
Meaning that whatever you're feeling right now, just know that that's okay.
Okay.
There is no right or wrong. And even grief itself is an incredibly personal journey. Like, there is no right or wrong with grief. We all navigate our own way through that. And so just to acknowledge that what you're feeling right now is not wrong, and to be okay with it, and just to be aware of it. Because I think so often we exacerbate things for ourselves and for other people because we judge. We judge ourselves and we judge other people, and you know, we compare. So those things, you know, keep them off the table. The second one would be is to acknowledge it, and also the second thing would be is to feel. Like, it's, again, as simple as it is, and it sounds simple, but it also can be incredibly challenging at times, because we're not used to often allowing ourselves to fully feel.
Yeah.
And when you're in that space that you are allowing yourself to fully feel, quite often we get this epiphany or this awareness of, holy shit, we will start reaching for a drink, wine, beer, whatever your vice is. We'll start reaching for food. We will start shopping. We will start Netflixing, because it's distraction.
Right. We'll start driving in motorsports. Tim's
really
okay with that.
But to be really aware of yourself when you're in that feeling space of just sitting and allowing yourself to feel without the distractions. Because again, the only way to feel better is to feel, and feeling is a path to healing, if you like. And the other thing I would suggest, and I suggest this to all of my clients, and that is to create a support network for yourself and to be able to speak what it is you're feeling. And it doesn't have to be a lot of people. It can be one person if that's what you have. But being able to actually verbalize and be able to shift that energy of your feelings by speaking them as well. And again, I would say choose wisely, because not everybody. I said not everybody deserves to, but not everybody can hold a space for you and your emotions, because so many of us aren't in touch with our own feelings, and so we have a great deal of discomfort when people start sharing theirs with us. And so, find that person that can hold a space for you, not someone that wants to try and fix it and change it, just someone that can hold a space for you to be whatever it is you are in terms of whatever you're thinking, whatever you're feeling, and just be in that space. And again, just choose wisely, somebody that you trust, somebody that you are really comfortable to be open and honest and to be able to share with, is incredibly important.
And I think that is a really important point that you make around holding the space for someone. And I know personally, I love fixing problems. I love being the solution maker and creator and deliverer. And so whenever I have people come to me and open up, I instantly go into, well, this is what you need to do. This is how you need to fix it. This is how you need to change. And I think one of the things that really hit home for me a few weeks ago when we were all in Sydney at Kerwin Ray's K2 was that discussion around, when people come to you, they don't always want you to fix it. Sometimes they just want you to hold that space for them so that they can be vulnerable and get it off their chest. And, one of the things that we discussed was the opportunity to say, okay, well, do you want me to fix it or do you want me to listen? And giving the person the opportunity to say, no, I just need you to listen. That's all I've got, And then for me, I've actually put that into practice, and it's actually quite surprising how much people stop and go, oh, I've got a choice. Thought you were just going to throw your opinion at me, which I usually do. So, it's actually been quite nice to surprise them.
Yeah, and I would offer something else to that as well, and that is when we go in with this mindset of fixing, is we're making the assumption that something is wrong.
Yeah.
And we're making it like what they're thinking and how they're feeling is wrong, and no feeling is ever wrong. And so, and even when we're, I guess, offering solutions, we're not fixing it. We're just giving a different perspective, a different offering, because it's not our job to fix anybody.
Yeah.
The only person who can make somebody feel differently is the person themselves, and it's not our job to fix anybody. And again, nothing's wrong. Like, there is nothing wrong. Being able to feel and have emotions is the gift and the privilege of actually being alive.
Absolutely. That's what makes us human.
What's the alternative? We're 6 feet under.
Yeah.
So being able to feel that's what life's about, and that's one of the beautiful things about life is having emotions. Because imagine going through life without having any emotions at all. It would be a pretty boring kind of existence. And so just allowing people the space to feel whatever they need to feel, and asking permission. Would you like some support? Would you like some suggestions? Rather than the concept of let me fix you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a really fantastic way to end. I just want to say thank you so much to both of you. I have had such a fantastic time learning from both of you. You bring so much to other people and to the business world. It's been an absolute privilege to get to work with you. Just before we do go though, Yvette, is there the best way for people to get in touch with you is?
Social media.
Social media?
Facebook, Yvette Tarrant, the Grief Support Coach, and Instagram, Yvette.Tarrant.coach.
Fantastic. I will post those links up in our chat as well, and I will be updating the guest book on the Twitch stream as well. So check those out. And I want to say to both of you, thank you so much. You absolutely rocked it. You stepped out of your comfort zones. We got through this 90 minutes easy. This is simple. This is fun.
Simple is easy.
Easy, this is fun. There you go. I already said it was easy. See?
And you're awesome.
You just got to trust me.
Thanks, Aileen.
All right, guys. Have a wonderful, wonderful Thursday evening. I'm going to go drink wine and go and sit in my happy feelings. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful night, and we will be back on Tuesday morning. And I look forward to you joining us then. Bye, everybody.
Awesome. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you.
Bye.